Good evening, everybody. You'll do the usual thing of just waiting for YouTube to confirm we're live. That's looking good. YouTube's just catching up. Excellent. We are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Porting Gitflow to Golang live. And today we've reached episode 12. Let's put the camera on. Hello. There you are. So yes, episode 12 already. And I've changed our photo for this week, as we've had a lot of foggy weather recently. Hello. Right. We're having some reliability issues with the stream. So, don't know what happened there. Please bear with us. What news from Wales? The big news from Wales is that from Friday we get some more COVID restrictions and a ban on serving of alcohol on premises across the entire country, which, given that this is Wales, has not gone down very well. Partly because there hasn't been a lot of evidence presented to demonstrate that the ban will actually help curb the rise of the pandemic. Unfortunately, although we've come out of our lockdown with rates reversing, unfortunately cases are climbing again, and they're climbing pretty rapidly. So the government's trying to take steps on this. Hasn't necessarily gone down very well. What other news? For me personally, I'm going to be updating LinkedIn tomorrow with a new job, which is cool. I'm still going to be doing this. I'm still going to be doing the live streams. I'm still going to be working on open source. But like many freelancers during the pandemic, business has suffered, and I've ended up taking a role somewhere, working for a lovely bunch of people. And I'll be updating more information about that on LinkedIn tomorrow. Right. So, before we get into tonight's topics, if you're watching live, hello. If you're watching from catch up, please do leave a message. Like, comment, subscribe, all the usual stuff to help boost us on YouTube. But I'm more interested in you. Please leave a comment when you're watching this. Whenever you're watching this, let me know, where are you from? Which part of the world are you from? How did you find us? Leave us a bit of news about your part of the world. Excuse me. And if you're watching on catch up, please do leave information about when you're doing this as well. So, we're having some more problems with YouTube tonight. So one moment. Let me see what's going on. Alright, bear with me a minute. We are having problems with our bitrate up to YouTube, which we don't normally have. It's the first, in 12 streams, this is the first time I'm aware of that we've had problems with our streaming. We'll persevere. If things are really bad, I'll record this and then upload it as a video. But we'll give it a go for now. So, what are we on about tonight? On our last stream, we had an excellent session where we figured out how to centralize calling out to the Git binary and handling errors. Two things I was absolutely keen on centralizing right from the get-go. And now with that done, what I want to do now is start making use of it. So I want to go back to building out the init command, the git hf init command. That's very important to me. I want to get that going. And it would be nice if we could finally get everything compiling tonight. Now, to put that second one in context, at the minute, the Go code we've been doing is an experiment. It's exploratory. What you may sometimes hear called as a spike is a term I hear people use. And this is our 12th episode, so we're about 24 hours, or about 3 working days into this experiment. We've just spread it out over best part of 3 months now. We've just spread it out over a longer period of time because we're doing one evening a week, and we haven't managed every single week either. This isn't unusual for me. If I'm exploring something, and it's rather than just churning out new features to an existing code base, it's not unusual for me to go 2 to 3 days exploring the code, getting the feel for it, getting the feel for the shape I want before I get the code compiling. It's not unusual. It's a little harder with a compiled language like Go because all the code has to compile. With a dynamic language like TypeScript, TypeScript it's all got to compile, you could argue, or working with PHP, for example, I will definitely, certainly with PHP, you can just load parts of the application, and it doesn't matter if other parts aren't loading while you're doing this kind of experimentation. So with Go, because it's a compiled language, we've got to get it all working. And if time allows, and if progress allows, I'd kind of like to get there tonight as well. Because I think we're getting close to the point where I'd like to start releasing some builds, and I'd like to start doing CI, continuous integration, so a pipeline that's running our tests, because I don't want to leave our tests to the very end of the project. I don't want to do that. So that's a stretch goal for tonight. Can we get everything compiling? We'll see how it goes with building out the command. Now, in terms of appetite for tonight, I reckon I'm good for between 2 and 2.5 hours. Might be one of our longer ones tonight. Just gut feel. So that'll take us through from 7:15 UK time through to about 9:45 UK time, somewhere about there. All right, let's get coding. Let me switch over to Linux Cam. Here we go. And let me just bring my monitoring window to the front so that I can see what you can see. Excellent. Right. So where we left it last time, we were working on this file here, the call get function, which is going to be part of our back-end code. Takes a string, set of arguments. We build up the data structure that needs to be passed into Scriptish. Run the command, and we've got some quite limited centralized error handling code. And last week we took apart the Git binary itself, and we determined that exit code 129 has a consistent meaning. When Git exits with 129, that has a meaning, and it normally means that the arguments we've passed in are unsupported. So it doesn't mean passing a bad value for a flag, but it means like passing in a flag that doesn't really exist, that kind of thing. And we also determined that other codes like exit code 128 aren't consistent enough. We went through the Git source code, we found contradicting uses of the exit code, and so we've added a comment here to remind ourselves that anything other than exit code 129 has to be passed back to our code, and on a command by command basis we've got to look at that exit code to decide what it means. That's what we decided. And that's what we achieved last week. Now this is part of our backend. Excuse me. And the idea is we're going to be building up a default backend. So eventually we're going to have support for multiple versions of Git, and even the ability to have a mock Git for helping us with our tests. We're not going to build any of that out tonight. we're going to stick with building out the default backend. This is going to use the same git commands that the existing shell script version of the Hubflow extension. It's going to reuse those because we know they work everywhere, or pretty much everywhere. So we're going to put those into here as and when we need them for tonight. That's what we're going to do. At the same time, so this is our Git abstraction layer, or the GAL, which we talked about. At the same time, we've also got our workspace package, which represents the working environment on the local machine. And we've got our two repos. We've got our local and our remote repo, and we need to move those. And I think that's where I'm going to start now. Let's have a quick look at them. So this is some of the code that doesn't fully compile yet. This is we're sketching in earlier episodes. We were sketching this out and then getting a feel for it. And a lot of this probably needs revisiting as we work through it. And we're going to drive that by implementing the init command. And this is currently part of the workspace package. And I'm kind of tempted to actually do something about that and move that. We'll see. We'll see. In fact, I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to get our existing code compiling now tonight, before we make any progress on the init command. I think now I'm talking this through. I think it's a good idea for us to flip this on the head. So let's look at what's not compiling. And let's see where we are. Right. So first of all, the way we're instantiating our workspaces doesn't work. That code is either incomplete or just plain a bad idea. So we're going to have to revisit that and restructure that. We've then got to look at the way the Hubflow business logic code is being initialized and managed as well. At the minute, we've just chucked in some placeholders for that. So we've got some tidying up to do there. Those are the things we're going to do. And we're going to do those so that we can make headway on the init command. So I'm just going to clear down all these open tabs for the moment. And what I'm going to do here, right, let's open init.go. And the commands have these letter prefixes in front of them in order to control the way they're initialized when the Go binary runs. And we covered that in an earlier episode as well. So if we look through here, the first thing we do is we build our workspace. And then through the workspace, we're expecting to access local, and probably later down we'll be adding in remote as well. So workspace local is the first thing we've got to do. So let's have a look at that. Let me just So what I just did there, let me slow down so I'm narrating better, is I double clicked on the tab so that this tab would remain open as I navigate around. Let me do that again, just in case you're not familiar with it. If I open it once, you see it's in italics. That means it's a temporary tab. There's probably a better term for it, but just think of it as a temporary tab. And if I double click it, it goes from italics to a regular font. That means it's no longer a temporary tab. Sorry, I just thought I saw a comment for a moment and I didn't. Apologies about that. That was just something out the corner of my eye. It was something else. And so a permanent tab, I'm going to call it a permanent tab. That means as I open another file, as I go back to our packages, and I go back into workspace and I go down to local, See how it's temporary, but our other tab is still there. Double click it and we're open. And now what we need to do is workspace actually needs to return a local and a remote. They need to work. Now how do we want to do that? Let's open workspace itself. So there's two ways we could do this. Well, there's more than two ways, but there's two ways. There's two ways that I'm thinking of. See, we've got here workspace local, where it doesn't return anything at the minute. And what we could do is actually return local. I'm being very simplistic here just to get us going. And then we could return. Bear with me for a minute. Right then. So what I'm doing here, we're creating a new local structure and we're returning its address back to the caller. That's not going to cut it because we don't want to create a new one every single time. So what we need to do up here is we're going to make local. No, I don't want to export it. I want local there. Local. That will probably fail. And we're going to return the address of it, like that. So we're saying here that our workspace structure has a member called local, which is in lowercase, which means it can't be directly accessed by code outside of the workspace package, but code inside the package can access it just fine. And then what we're doing here is when you call ws.local, like we do here, it actually returns the pointer to the local structure so that we can then do other operations on it. That's the idea. And as soon as we're here, we might as well do the same for remote and get that done, because we know we're going to do that. So while we're here, we might as well do the same. There we go. And it's complaining because I've not actually told it to return anything. And rightly or wrongly, in terms of Golang performance, I'm returning a pointer. That's what the star should signify. So that we are not taking a copy of this structure whatsoever. Local and remote currently have nothing in them. That may change as we build out. For now, they're empty structures. They're merely structures for us to hang methods off of in an OO style approach. That's merely what they are for now. But by returning a pointer, it's the least amount of data to return, and it means everything will be accessing the same copy of that structure. So that's what we're going to do. So we've done that. Let's see how that's changed our compilation. That's revealed some more, that we're accessing functions that don't exist. Local doesn't have an isgit repo, and local doesn't have an init repo defined. So that's our next step. This isn't really organized at the minute. How do I want to organize this? I'm just thinking about how to organize the code. I'm not going to worry about that too much now. I'm not sure what shape I want this code to have yet. So I'm just going to return false for now. Is get repo to be done. So we have to add a, oh, it's complaining about the colon, of course. Me using too many different languages and Golang syntax always being pushed to the back. So we'll come back and do the comment later. I'm almost certainly going to break this file up. And to break this file up, I've got a choice. I can create a sub package. I can create another package at the top level. Or we can just use the local prefix in front of it and have lots of files in this one folder, which does not appeal. Right, and then we want an init repo as well. And that's not going to return anything. Not yet. Right now we just want the code to compile before we actually populate it with functionality. That's what I want. I'm at the point where I want it compiling. That's good. So what we've done now is these two compiler time errors here are gone. And we're down to the next one, which is headless, used as a value. So let's have a look at that. So is headless, currently doesn't return anything. So it exists, and it's right there. Return false. That will fix that. Compile and go. Now, just because it's on my mind at the minute, you'll notice I'm switching to a full desktop terminal, if you like, a native terminal, in order to compile and run the code. I could do it from inside VS Code. The reason I'm not is, in order for the code to be readable on the live stream, for it to look okay on whatever display or device you're looking at, is I've got the screen magnified a bit compared to how I normally have it. And it doesn't, in here, it doesn't leave a lot of screen estate. If I just move that to one side of it. So we can run a terminal in here. And we can do go build dot here. Oh, it will help if we're in the right subfolder. So we can do that. And it does allow us, so there's some benefits here. It does allow us to click through and see what's going on. We can hold down Control because I'm on Linux. It's Command on macOS, and I don't use it on Windows, so I can't help you there. Probably Control again. And we can click through to the file to see exactly where the compile error is. So there are some productivity benefits from that, but we've got all this screen estate, and I can close the panel, but there's no easy way that I can see to minimize it out of the way. Now it might be. Let's just have a quick look. View. Is there anything in here I can do to make it just get out of the way? I'm begrudging the amount of screen space it's taking up, you see. There doesn't seem to be. So, I mean, I can drag it all the way down and do it that way. And then terminal. See, to get it back, and you've got different layouts, for example. But that I'm used to doing those mostly with the. So we've got control. We can do it from the command line. We can use the old Doom shortcut. Control backtick. Used to bring the console up in Doom, if memory serves. Now that's going back a few years. If we ever meet in a pub or at a conference, you should ask me about, well, first of all, you should buy me a nice whiskey, and then you should ask me to tell the story of the first time I ran Doom, the very first original version of Doom. There's some funny stuff to share, but I'm not sharing that on camera. We'll give this a go. We'll give the terminal a go, just so I'm not, because I think this is a bit jarring. I think working in and out of the terminal is less jarring for the viewer, so I'm going to try that for tonight for you. So the command here, the complaint here is require clean working tree is undefined. So we need to add that to WS local. Oh, it's got some feedback from Rob. Let me just bring that in. Also, first of all, good evening, Rob. His first comment, there's 3 of these, is he says he's old-fashioned. He is older than me. Fair play. Not by much. And yeah, the terminal is a separate application. Yeah. I agree with that one. Rob then says, integrated terminals tend to be very good at keyboard. Now, I'm going to hazard a guess here, and I imagine what Rob's talking about is keyboards that lag, and they're so slow to render that they can't keep up with the typing, and then you start to get repeated letters where you've only pressed a letter once, that old kind of thing. I imagine that's what he's on about, because that's my experience anyway. And thirdly, Rob has said, Sublime Text also uses control backtick for the console. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Speaking of Sublime Text, it's about time they release some sort of Sublime Text 4 preview or something. It would be nice to see that continue. It would be a shame if VS Code... I mean, VS Code's very useful, and it's definitely become, for me, far more practical and far more powerful than Sublime Text. But we have decent editors today because of Sublime Text. I'd say more than anything else. Some people would argue TextMate. Ooh, I'm going to pull that up in a moment, Rob. Some people would argue TextMate is the reason we have decent editors these days, but I'm going to argue is actually Sublime Text is the this whole pattern here that Atom and then VS Code followed of an editing shell with really good extension support, but also blazingly fast. Sublime Text pioneered it, and I would argue nothing's touched Sublime Text for performance. I still use Sublime Text every day alongside VS Code, and it starts up in a fraction of the time of anything else. When I log into my laptop and I fire up applications, it doesn't matter if I fire up Sublime Text last after clicking the icons for a web browser, clicking the icons for VS Code and other things. Sublime Text is always the first window open. It's fantastic. Okay, so Rob says that Sublime Text 4 has been in preview for over a year. I must admit, I've completely missed that. I'm going to go have a look at that in the morning. I would happily buy a Sublime Text 4 license. Yeah, it was my main text editor and development tool for many years, and I would just love to continue to support it. And on the history of these tools, Rob says TextMate was good, but Sublime Text did extensions properly. Yes, it did. A shame they kind of slid backwards in ST3, I'd argue. And it also did the command palette. Yes, that's true, the command palette. So when we press Control-Shift-P and we bring that up, let me just move Rob's comment out of the way. This command palette here, there's a Sublime Text feature. Let's close that. Now, I'd argue one thing that Sublime Text made popular and is important for was syntax highlighting. Decent syntax highlighting. For me, that is an area where everything that came before was pretty naff until TextMate came along. I mean, you can see, looking at the screen, I've got a heavily customized setup here. I've optimized it for my brain with the color choices, all the highlighting. This is all, I'm moving the wrong mouse pad. There we go, wrong trackpad. This is all optimized for me and how I want my brain to work. And it's all thanks to Sublime Text. I'm really, and TextMate for theming. Back to the code. Back to the code. I was just going to say, this is another reason why the stream might take 2.5 hours if I keep talking like this tonight. What can I say? It's been a long day and it's nice to talk code. So we were adding a new command. We were adding require clean working tree. And we are going to just chuck it down here for now. We want the code compiling. We're not necessarily going to keep the structure. But add something here. Require clean working tree to be done. So that will compile. Let's go back. I'm not really one for keyboard shortcuts in tools. I'm lucky enough to have enough mobility to be able to use the mouse, and I do prefer it. And because I switch between Linux and Mac a lot during the day, and their keyboard shortcuts are often so different, I just can't keep them in my head. Right, so it's now complaining that we're using it as a value. And it's absolutely true. So this is me taking shell style code and putting it straight into Go. So in a shell script, this works. If we're headless, we're okay. Otherwise, we require a clean working tree. But in Golang, we've got to restructure that. So let's do that. Let's just do that. So that should fix that. Oh, see, my other thing as well is Alt tabbing for different windows really suits my way of working as well. Right, so we've got all that compiling and moving on. We now have our Hubflow code and our Hubflow structure. And this is where we probably need to put a little bit more thought. I don't have the architecture diagram up and quick and easy to switch to tonight. I didn't set up the iPad cam. But basically, we wanted our reusable business logic to sit outside of the code that interacts directly with Git. That way, the workspaces and the local and the remote repos can be reused for other tools down the road, which would be very nice to do. And so what we did was we created this Hubflow structure, which we import from the Hubflow package that we're building. And then it will, we will use that to publish commands like this. So if I open up our file browser, let me just close command out, and let's close Gal for the moment. So we've got Gal, our helpers, workspace where we'll be doing a lot of the work, and we've got Hubflow as well. And in here, we were writing out lots of different commands. I'm just going to close the terminal down to give it a bit more space. Or I would, if it would let me. There we go. And most of these haven't been rewritten to actually work with a Hubflow structure at the minute. So for example, if we go back to our code that's not compiling, which is actually an init command, we've got is initialized. And So it is initialized. So if we go back over here, that's a query. So is Hubflow initialized? Here we go. So when we were sketching out the code in previous weeks, one of the things we identified was we would want something that said is Hubflow initialized. And it takes a workspace as a parameter. But what we can do, if we do h star Hubflow, we can, wrong win. I've been so used to using a Mac's keyboard layout today. You're going to see menus pop up as I keep hitting Alt by accident, because of course it's on a PC keyboard, and this Linux machine is a laptop with a normal PC layout. Alt for us is where Command is on the Mac, so we're going to see a lot of that. So we can now add is Hubflow initialized via that, and then if we fire up the terminal, do a build. Still unhappy? Why are you unhappy? What have I done that's silly? It's the name of it. It just wants to be is initialized. So if I shorten the name of that file so it's consistent, there we go. And then let's go back to the terminal, do another build. I'm just going to give myself some more space. So now it's complaining that we've not passed the workspace in. That's okay. Let's go over here to our init command. And we're going to pass in our workspace. And now you're complaining because we need to pass in its address, which also suggests we should change how we initialize our workspace. That's something to think about. Should we have a new workspace command that returns as a pointer to the workspace? And then we don't have to keep using an address here in all of our function calls. I think that's a good idea. Let's close the terminal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way down and just minimize this, go back to workspace, and in workspace itself, got all this stuff here that needs to be moved out. We're going to have a function, and we're going to call it func new workspace, and we want to take as a parameter as a string, and we're going to return a workspace pointer. So WS equals workspace, and we want root dir. And do we actually set? We're not setting anything else there. So we're just going to create that for the moment. We'll deal with the remote later, and we're going to return the address of that. And we don't see, it looks like we've got to do that, and you are complaining. Why are you complaining? That's all right. To be done. And again, we are actually, we'll write the comment in this time. Do I want new workspace or do I want init workspace? I'm going to go with new workspace. And now then, got to be careful here. The reason I'm hesitating is I'm writing the comment for what new workspace is, and you normally say new works, a command that's a function that starts with new, you'd normally say it creates a new particular data structure, initialize it, and returns a pointer to it. It's what you'd normally say. But because our workspace is an abstraction for a Git workspace on a file system, that language doesn't work for me. Because someone who's not familiar with the inner workings of the code may get a misleading impression, and they may think that we're actually creating the Git workspace on disk rather than just creating a data structure in memory. So what do we want to do? He says, biting his nails. So the first thing I'm thinking of, and I'm thinking out loud here, is do I want to keep the convention of new workspace? Because to a Golang programmer, someone who uses Golang regularly, that means something to them. And I kind of think I do. I don't want to rename this. Yeah, we could go with Init workspace or open workspace or something like that. But we don't want to use Init workspace because, again, the language implies activity that doesn't an action that doesn't happen. Open workspace implies the workspace has to exist, which is also not true. The Hubflow extension will actually initialize an empty folder into a Git repo if you want it. It will do all of that. So we just got to find the right language for this comment. I'm just going to go with the basics for now, despite my concern about it. And we're going to do that. Now, how do we document parameters? So bear with me. What I want to do is go package. Golang packages documentation. We're just going to jump into it. Doesn't matter what we jump into. I want to see something that has parameters. And I want to see how they go about documenting those parameters. And sadly, they don't. They're not really doing that here in the standard library. So anytime I want to know how to do something, first place I go is the standard library to see how it's normally done. That didn't bring up anything for me. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my existing code and see if I've done anything different. And I haven't done it either in the past. Admittedly, most of these don't really take parameters, so that's not a very good example. Let's have a look at anything here. No, I've not really documented parameters very well either. So that's a shame. Now, where were we? I think we were in... Where has that gone? Oh, here we go. So we're just going to write our own convention here. The folder where the local Git repo is will be created. Is all will be created. We'll go with that. It's not great language, but it will do. So that gives us a new workspace. If we go back to the init command now, what we're going to say is ws equals workspace dot new workspace, and we take a parameter which is our current working directory. So now down here, here's the payoff. So we've done a bit of refactoring here. Right. You could argue that's a little nicer to read anyway, and a little more maintainable than just passing than asking the caller to set up their own structure. I'm going to let people argue about that, which means we need to do the same for Hubflow in a minute. I'll fix that in a minute. But here's the payoff, is now we're just passing in WS into isInitialized, and the fact that we've returned, the fact that WS up here is a pointer. Is the tooltip going to do it? Yes, it does. The fact that this is a pointer means that we've just simplified things. We've made life easy for ourselves, which sounds good. And we're going to do the same for Hubflow while we're here. So what we're going to do, hubflow.go, which is where our structure is. You don't have to do it this way. I find putting the new function in the same file as the structure, it just means I always remember where it is. You don't have to do it this way, and I'm not promising I do it consistently either. And this returns a Hubflow. So hf equals Hubflow, return pointer to hf. Nope, pointer. There we go. It's so strange and also so satisfying working with pointers again. It's one thing I miss from dynamic languages, scripting languages like TypeScript and PHP and Python. Actually going down to this sort of lower level of programming style. Is it slower? I'm not sure it is. If you were to take everything PHP can do and make that available via Go's standard library, for example, I'm not sure the end result would be, as a programmer, I'm not sure it would take you much longer to write code in reality, because the compiler is really fast. Would you get some interesting funky output? I'm sure you would actually swap one class of problems for another. So yeah, I'm reminiscing. I'm showing my age. You can see that one. I'm going a bit silver. I'm showing my age tonight. Right. Hubflow struct for you. That's better language. That's better language. So I'm going to create and returns a new workspace struct for you. That's better language. I like that. So now what we're going to do down here, hubflow.new hubflow. There we go. So if we start passing the Hubflow around at all, it's already a pointer. I feel better about that. I'm sure someone watching the stream will be able to look at what I'm doing and go, no, absolutely not. But right now, today, I'm feeling good about that. So, now to our next compile error, which is going to be determine origin doesn't exist. And once again, chances are we've already identified this as an option, as an operation, and we just haven't made it available via Hubflow. Excuse me. No, it looks like we actually haven't got this one in. Okay. Looks like we're going to be building a new one out. So bear with me. I'm just going to grab a piece of code just to get us started. This is going to be a query determine origin.go. And it's going to take HF star Hubflow. Come on. Determine origin. We want a workspace, which means we've got to import that. So let me go and grab that, the import statement from here. So there's absolutely no sense in me typing it out all the time when I can just grab it and save myself a bit of time. Fix the comment. Determine origin. Now what do we need to return? We need to return a string. And just for today, or just for this purpose, we're going to chuck in here a hard-coded string, and we'll make it dynamic in a bit. And because that's complaining, I'm just going to fix a comment there on that file. And now how are we looking? Let's try and do a compile again. I wish the terminal would scroll properly. And let's close that so we can see what's going on. Right then, assignment mismatch. 2 variables, but determine origin only returns 1 value. So I bet I'm expecting an error as well. Let's have a look back to our command. Oh, the other thing worth pointing out is look how the open tabs is starting to stack up already. Yes, it's expecting an error. So determine origin needs to return string error, and we put those in brackets if memory serves. Return origin and nil. We're not returning an error yet. And if we run our build, non-bool error, type error used as if condition. So init.go line 119. Let's go here. So if error not equals nil is what we should have written. And now you are complaining that origin is declared but not used. So here's the other thing about Go, is if you create variables but don't do anything with them, it complains. It says no you don't, you have to use everything. So for the purposes of getting this compiled, we're just going to assign that to the empty value, because I want to see it compile. Woohoo! Our code compiles. A celebratory drink. Apple juice and lemonade, if anyone's wondering. Very, very refreshing. Right. So we've got to the point now where our very sketchy code, and freely admit, you know, it's all very experimental still at this point, but it now compiles, which is awesome. And Rob says that he loves undefined variables and unused imports being errors. I've got mixed feelings about it. In terms of a finished polished product, it's really handy. It's great. But at times like this, where I'm sketching out code and I'm trying to keep it compiling as I go along, I don't know. I've got, I mean, I've had to, I'm pointing at the screen, I'm sorry. You know, I've had to get rid of origin and assign it to the empty variable in order to make the code compile. And just little things like that, I don't know, it slows me down in my style when I'm sketching out code. But yeah, our code compiles, which is fantastic. So what I want to do now is I think we want to start making this code actually do something. I mean, there's a lot more to do with the init command anyway. We're by nowhere near there. But it would be nice if this code wasn't just placeholders, if it actually worked. One of the things I'm trying to think about here is we switch styles part way down. Once we create our workspace, and then we start switching into Hubflow having the logic. Sorry, I've got to share this. So Rob says he gets where I'm coming from with the during dev issues I've just talked about with the compiler. But he says that on the whole, he thinks the benefits outweigh as no one with an asterisk, and I'll get to that in a moment, goes back and tidies up. No one goes back and tidies up. And that is very true. It is very rare to find people who go back and tidy up their code. You find those people, God, hug them close. Don't let them escape. Hope to work with them for the rest of your career. They're wonderful to work with. And the asterisk, thank you, Rob. Rob says, except you. He gives me too much credit. I'm perfectly capable of writing and shipping code that is not a work of art. He gives me far too much credit. But we have worked together, so he has actually seen me write code in anger. He's not just seeing me write. I mean, this isn't demonstration code. This is going to be code that's out there in production. But I have actually worked with Rob on a project. This time last year, in fact. Well, just before this time last year. Anyway, coming back to this. We've got this switch, as I was saying, switch in style. We start by working with the workspace and making sure we've got a workspace. And then we switch to do everything through Hubflow. And that doesn't feel right to me. I don't know quite what it should do, what it should look like yet. I'm not sure. I think what we probably need to do is make more headway, as they say. We should probably get more of the init command built. Maybe something like feature, which is a huge command set. Get that built out, and then the right structure will emerge. And what I'm doing here, the process for anyone watching, because I'm trying to make these educational. I certainly can't make them entertaining, so educational is my best bet. The process here, and the reason I say it doesn't feel right, is it's my inner observer, my inner critic, if you like. No, not inner critic. I'm not going to use that term. Inner critic implies a voice in your head, and it's not a voice. It's pure. It's an emotional thing. Your inner observer absorbs data, information, and crunches it in the background. And you're not consciously aware of this crunching going on. And it informs you through emotion. It feeds back to you through emotion, and you've got to learn to listen for this emotion, and over time learn to understand it and interpret it. And right now, my inner observer is feeling uncomfortable with the switch in style, which is why I've pointed it out. But he's also feeling uncomfortable when challenged to come up with what it should be and where it should switch. Which is why I think we need more data. Got to feed the inner observer more data, more experience, make some headway to give us a better, so I can get a better feel for how the code should be. So that's the process. Right. What I'm going to do now is I'm going back to our file browser because I want to open the original shell script, which should be, I keep closing too many things, get hf-init. Let's open that up, and we're going to pin this, and we're going to pin our command that we're writing. This is a great feature. If you've not played with this, it's recently been added, and then they've made some great improvements to it over the summer. Just like you can pin browser tabs in VS Code, you can now pin editor tabs. And originally the title would disappear and you just see a row of pins if you'd pinned like half a dozen, which limited its usefulness. But now the title still remains in the pinned tab, which is fantastic. So no matter what I'm doing over here, it'd be even better if they didn't scroll, but that's a different problem. But at least now they're forced to the front, so I always know they're going to be at the left. So they're easier to find and switch between. So what I want to do here, I want to make more headway by actually getting through all of this code. And we're just going to sketch it. Excuse me. We're going to sketch this code out. We're going to put in empty dummy placeholders for everything, and then we're going to refactor the structure of that as we go along. And then we'll make the code do something. So I've said I feel like I want to make the code do something. I want to sketch the code out a bit more first. So what we got here. If Hubflow has master configured. Well, we're not going to do anything like that. So if hf dot has production branch configured. Now the problem is can I easily, is there a way to easily switch between these? Is there a keyboard shortcut? Let me just try something. Control doesn't do it. Alt 1 and Alt 2 will allow me to switch between those. That helps. Right, so we've got, if it's configured and we're not forcing things, why does the force flag affect that way? I kind of want to revamp this. I kind of want to do this instead. I kind of want to do prod branch hf dot determine production branch integration branch equals hf determine integration branch, and I want to go with feature branch prefix. Yes, these are long names, but they're very readable, and I think they're a lot easier to work with than the names we use in the existing code. Equals determine feature branch prefix. So these are 3 commands that we're going to add to the Hubflow logic, and they're going to get that from the config. And I don't think these names are going to get. I almost want to have under Hubflow. I almost want to have a config sub package for this. What I'm thinking of is here, new folder. I actually don't need it doesn't need to be a, bear with me a moment, new file, config get production branch .go. We just grab anything to grab into there. What I'll deal with that in a moment, that error in a moment. I'm also going to have config.go. Don't need the import, and we're going to export type config struct. It's going to be an empty struct. Config okay, represents configuration found in the local Git repo. What we probably want is production branch string, integration branch string, and it's complaining that we've got to do those feature branch prefix string. Okay, production branch. I'm just thinking about how I want to structure this. To be done. I'm just putting comments in right now to stop the yellow squiggles. This is the integration branch. Integration branch to be done, and feature branch prefix to be done. Right. Now, making these members of the config struct, properties if you like, is probably a bad idea. They should probably be functions. It's nice just to be able to read a string straight out. But the problem with that is I can't guarantee that they've been given decent values, that they've been set. I can't guarantee. We'll roll with it. We'll roll with it. This is an example where Go should probably be a slightly different structure to anything else. But you'll see the problem in a minute. So if we add a config of type config, and it starts off empty. So this is the thing. We create a new Hubflow. We've got to pass in a workspace in order to populate those fields. So now we're having a knock-on effect. So if I go back to our init is initialized, which takes a workspace, so I can grab the import statement. We are now saying that the Hubflow code now requires a workspace here in order to populate config, which we were trying to avoid. We wanted to make it a parameter so it was more, it could work with, it didn't care, it was less stateful. That's the thing I'm not liking about adding those members of config. Is we're adding more state. It doesn't feel appropriate. I really don't want to. So I'm just working through my feelings on it. I'm a great believer in being able to dump data structures out. And if we did something like this, where you passed a workspace into the new Hubflow, and we had workspace inside here, for example, and you are complaining why. Should probably be that in. No, that's me being silly. Why are you complaining? Undefined workspace, because you actually are workspace.workspace. That's why you're complaining. It's me being silly. Right. The problem is for me, I mean, apart from it being too stateful, I'm starting to get uncomfortable with that, is now if I start to dump the Hubflow structure, I'm going to be, every time I need to dump that for any reason, I've now got, it will automatically be dumping anything inside workspace. If workspace becomes stateful, or overly stateful with a lot of data in there, and for example, if local and remote repo structures also become stateful, you get this cascading effect. And I'm not feeling great about it. I mean, there are benefits that we no longer need to pass a workspace parameter in all over the place. That's a benefit, and probably a good one. It's a style of programming I've been trying to get away from for years. And I'm really not sure about it. I am really not sure about it. I'm just weighing it up because it definitely works. It solves my stateful problem regarding config, because this guarantees I can make sure config is initialized. But the problem is, I mean, this has all been triggered by the values of config. So let's go back to my tab with config in. Where's that gone? Here it is. In a language like TypeScript, these would be getters and setters, because TypeScript has native support for that. And so I could guarantee that I could make these. I can do that. I'm being silly. I've got a better idea. So I'll add some production branch, and then new value string. Can I do nullable parameters in Golang? If I can, this will work. And as a style of programming I absolutely hate, but I'm going to do it anyway. Nullable parameter. Can I do it? That's from 2013. I want something. Everyone's saying, everything is saying that we don't have optional parameters or default parameter values. Let's have a quick read of this. This is from 2019. Excuse me. Right. Oh, there's a with thing. Oh, new. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading through this and just seeing how they've fudged this. Vary edit functions with options. Vary addicts are doable. Right, okay, we can't do this style. What I was going to do was something like this. Bear in mind this syntax doesn't work. So if new value equals nil, return some value. So basically make it a combined getter setter. But we can't do that. So what we've got to do is write explicit getters and setters, which is fine. Explicit code's okay. It takes a bit longer. In this case, it takes a bit longer to write, but it's worth it. So what we want here is get production branch. That's going to return a string, and this is going to return main. And we'll make all these work another time. Remember, we're just sketching this out. Set production branch, new value string to be done. And of course, these are going to need comments. To be done. Set production branch to be done. And we're going to do the same here for the integration branch, which I'm just going to quickly do. And set integration branch. Now the reason I'm doing this here is I'm making these config items as explicit as possible. I don't want get feature branch prefix. We can make this all just parameterized, so we could just pass parameters in everywhere, like the name of the config item we want and its default value if it's not set. I don't want that at this moment, because I want to see that all this code is done and tested. When we come to doing code coverage, I want to make sure that we've got explicit support for this. So set feature branch prefix. So that's our config. And we've got this here, config get production branch. We're going to drop that for now. We no longer need that file I created. Let's go back to where we initialized Hubflow. We are still not passing in a... Should we be passing in a workspace? No, I want to avoid that. I may end up having to do it, but right now I want to avoid that. Absolutely want to avoid that. Which does mean we need to take a workspace in here. So there's a trade-off here by not passing a workspace in statefully through our main object, our main structure, if you like. Instead, we pay a price that we've got to explicitly import it here, and we've got to support it everywhere else. And make it a parameter that we've got to pass all around the place. So we're paying a price for this design choice. And you can see why people therefore prefer to not make these parameters. And actually put them into the parent structure. And maybe I've made the wrong choice here. I hope not. We're going to find out. So if we go back to our init command, hf.config.get production branch, hf.config.get integration branch, hf.config.get feature branch prefix. And it's probably complaining because we're not doing anything with those variables. But we've moved forward. Now, ignoring the red squiggly for the moment, let's just take a look at this and see what it looks like as a piece of code. So we are accessing the config as a member of HF. And we're using And we're using this just to give us, we're using this as namespacing basically. We're using these empty structures as namespacing, just to give some structure to our code. How do I feel about that? How do I feel about that? I feel alright for now. I feel alright about it. Let's make some more headway. So this code's kind of interactive and the non-interactive is all mixed up and is a bit of a mess. I'd prefer to straighten that out. Right. So what we've got here, we've got code for checking if a local branch exists. We pass in a list and we search those in order to work out what the prefix should be. And that's important. So the code I've just written just calls the config and gets it out of the config. But what we need to do is determine what the production branch should be, which is different. So although we've written this config code, we can't call it here. We've actually got to call it. We've actually got to still write that determine code. So let me. So actually, we've got query determine origin already. We'll grab that, and we're going to call this query determine production branch .go. So determine production branch. I'm going to grab that, and we are going to go new file, query determine integration branch.go. So that's going to be determine integration branch. And we'll just tweak this comment here so the yellow squiggly goes away. And then we're going to do one more. Query determine feature branch prefix.go. Determine feature branch prefix. Determine feature branch prefix. Right, and we're going to populate all of these as we go along. Now, for now, all we're doing with them, these are all placeholders. So this is going to be main for production branch. Our feature branch prefix is going to return feature slash, and our integration branch is going to return develop. And these should be calling the config. But right now we're not actually animating any of this code, if you like. All we're doing is sketching. That can all go. That can go. So our main business logic here is actually calling determine production branch. We're not accessing the config. That's going to be hidden from us. Well, not hidden from us, but it's going to be handled for us. We're not going to worry about it. And that is complaining returns 2 values. So for now we're going to ignore the error. It should probably return 1 anyway. I'll think about that. I'll think about whether I should do that. Okay. So what I want to do here, if I go back to the code, see, we've got this we've got this if else ladder here, and I don't like it. I don't like how deeply nested it is. That'll be an absolute bugger to test. There'll be I just flat out don't like it. And we're only implementing the non-interactive version, the one that doesn't prompt you. So we can that's all we're doing today. So we can simplify all of this, and then when we support the interactive flag, we can handle that separately. So we go and get, let me go back to here. Okay, so what branches should we be using? What prefix do we want to use for future branches? Right then. So we'll deal with we'll go and get that information, and we need to do something with it. What we want to do with it, if we scroll back here for a minute, so I'm going back to the shellcode. I'm also going to make a bit more space. I keep forgetting, of course, that I am over here on this side of the screen. Let's relax a bit. See, we've got this case here that's buried without the -f flag for force, which says that the branches should be created. It's all a bit of I'm not comfortable with that structure. Right then. Do they exist? So, and this is where I'd normally just put together an array in a dynamic language and iterate over them and create them. If not, I'd do something like this in a dynamic language. For branches, range, production branch, integration branch. And of course, there's probably too many brackets there and all sorts. But if I could build an array with just those in. So what I can do is branches is string branches dot append production branch, branches dot append integration branch, and then for branch equals range of branches. Of course that goes there. Something like that. That can't be right anyway. Right then, let me just have a quick look at the syntax for this. Golang range over slice. Iterating over slices, range go by example. Just dump into that. Aha! There's also a reminder. I can just do production branch. Can I do that here? Integration branch. There is a nice syntax I can use there, so I don't have to do that. And then I can do that. Just because it hasn't got a comma in the end. Yes, it is. And I don't care about the index, so we can do that. Now, why aren't you happy? Branch declared but not used. There we go. So what we can do here is if hf dot branch exists, if not hf branch exists, hf dot create branch, and of course that'll make a workspace. We can do something like that. It's complaining those don't exist, so that's great. But we can do something like that, and then if I go back to my other code, I've still got to deal with the fact that we may be working with a folder with no head or anything. I've got to think of that. So there's code here about using local and remote branches to work out what the name of the master branch should be, the production branch. But we'll deal with that in a minute. It's got the same logic for develop, pretty much. So this restructuring, we need to be careful with it. Right then, make sure. There's only a comment up here for the sake of it. So up here we're on about doing the asking. Kind of want to move that. Do we need to ask? Right. Make sure the branches exist. That's an interesting thought. I should explain myself. Branch exists and create branch should probably take a repo, not a workspace. Is what they should do, because branch exists and create branch should work regardless of whether it's local or remote. They probably shouldn't care. So that's something we'll probably do as well as we work through this. Oh, I've had 2 likes. Thank you, everybody. That's very kind of you. And I'm sorry that I didn't notice. And we've got 4 viewers at the minute. Hello, everybody. Whee. I've got my head down on code. I'm just oblivious. I'm terrible. I'm sorry. So if we go back to our shell script for a minute, the reason this structure is such a, I'm not going to say rat's nest, that's very unkind. The reason the structure is this if else, it's snakes and ladders. I'm going to call it snakes and ladders. The reason the structure is so snakes and ladders is because force flag and interactive mode together create a lot of different ways, a lot of complexity here. And I'm sure some of this could be tidied up. I'm sure it should. But that's the reason it's structured like that. And I'm gonna try and simplify it and probably not get away with it. I'm certainly going to try and simplify it. Now, I've said here that I want branch exists to take a repo. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to build these out now. These are going to be queries. So Hubflow. Let's see if we've got any here. We don't have a query yet for them. So I'm just going to grab, some of these are going to get thrown away by the time we're done. I'm going to grab one that we've built out, just to copy and paste it again. And we're going to have a new file, query branch exist.go. So this is branch exists. This is branch exists, and we're going to take a workspace.repo this time. And we're going to return just a simple boolean. And for now, we're going to return false, just as a placeholder. Actually, what we're going to do is return, I'm going to call this R for repo, R dot branch exists. And that probably makes a workspace, something like that. I bet that doesn't exist. And because we're passing in an interface, we don't take a pointer at that point. And branch exists, too many arguments. Let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at our repo design, because this is probably going to need fixing. Branch exists should take, should it take a workspace? Yes, it should. WS star workspace. I might as well add that to all of these now. It's probably going to cause some compile problems, which I'm going to have to fix. But we want our repo to do all of these. Where's that code gone? It is in local. It is not in local. It is query branch exists right here. Right. And you are complaining that I'm returning that as a value, but I'm calling you, so why doesn't that work? Now, by passing in a repo, this is where code may have to get stateful. I've made a mistake here. We can't pass in the workspace, we don't have it. So this, well, it seems like a good idea. In practice, I can't do it yet. The repo itself is going to have to know about the workspace. There's no two ways about that. So we take these out. Let's take all these out. So there's no way in hell this is going to work yet. There's work to do here. If we go back to here, you're no longer complaining. You are complaining when I save it. And you are complaining that I'm using it as a value, but I'm calling it. Why don't you like that? What am I not understanding here? It's an interface that should have those on it. What am I not understanding? Because you'd think that would work. You take a type, that's an interface. You call a you call a property on it. That property is a function. It returns a value. We return the value. You'd kind of think and you'd kind of hope that that would just work. But there is something silly that I've done that I'm not spotting. Branch exists used as value. So used as value. Let's Google the error message and see what's going on. So what the error actually means is branch exists currently doesn't return anything. Which is right, it doesn't. Branch exists needs to return a ball. That means to return a boolean as well, but we're doing one at a time. So now it returns a value. Now is no problem. So that's a bit of a cryptic error message. That's an error message that at first glance could be a little more friendly. It should say like branch exists doesn't return a value, something like that. But we'll take that for now. I don't like this. Don't like this. Right. Okay, why do I keep saying I don't like this? One of my frustrations about Go in the past when I've used it is its lack of extensibility. I hate packages that are not open to extension, and I feel that is an area where Go is weak. I really do. And I don't like. I mean, package name dot function name. That's yeah. But using these HF, hanging everything off the structure like this, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. This is why I don't use Golang for all my code. In other languages, I would definitely structure and express that differently, and I'd feel happier with that. However, right now, there's nothing we're going to do about that. Though there is an argument. We don't need a structure. Because our workspace, we've got the workspace, which it has to be a structure. It's got to be stateful. But our business logic doesn't have a structure, therefore doesn't need to take HF as a parameter. I'm toying here. I am seriously toying here with this. Just going all ham in. Get rid of the Hubflow structure. Just make everything functions. Going full ham on it. And Rob is agreeing with what I'm doing. So I'm going all in on this. So let me go down to my Hubflow here, and let me rebuild these. You got to bear with me while I find them. So branch exists, no longer takes that. Determine feature branch prefix again. I don't know what you call this this parameter here that goes before the function name, and that attaches it to a particular structure. I don't know what the actual correct name for that term is. correct term for that particular thing is. I should do, really. I should know that. Right then. So let's get rid of all of this. So at least now we're just adding new functions into here. We're not hanging them off some structure that has no state. We're eliminating statefulness, and that honestly feels wonderful. Probably broken all the compiling. Let's try to compile for a bit. Let's do a compile. Yeah, we've broken a few things. Too many arguments to branch exists. Let's have a look at that. So we forgot to pass the branch name in. Well, that was silly of me. So let's click through to that. Branch exists, name string. Pass that through, and that isn't supported in there. So there we go. And there's a way to go back, which doesn't have a keyboard shortcut on Linux. Probably should. That's something I want to look at. And also, we've got the thing that local doesn't implement the repo interface. So that's something else we've got to fix. So let's have a look at that. And I know I could use the command palette to open things up. Right, so let me make some real estate here. Let's close that, and then let's editor layer. I want to move that to the right. This is where a decent sized monitor helps a lot, is being able to do side-by-side programming. And I'll explain that a bit more in a minute, because there's something in particular I want to point out, but I want this working first. So, do we have all tags? We've called it get tags. So let's fix that here. Should be get tags. It's headless. Should return a ball. Now it does. Tag exists. Do we have that on here yet? Oh, we do have all tags actually. So what's the difference between all tags and get tags? Can't remember. Tag exists we have. Oh, branch exists. We need to find that. I want to structure this in a create branch. Branch exists. Branch exists. Branch exists. Where are you? Branch exists. Here you go. And you take name string and you return a bool. And we're just going to return false just to keep the compiler happy. Right. Does that now implement everything? So we'll compile, and right, we're missing the compare branches method, so that's handy. When it does implement an interface, it tells us what's missing. So compare branches is missing. Do we have anything like that? Do we want that in a repo? Compare branches can kind of go across repo, so I'm going to take that out of the repo interface for now. All of this is very much work in progress. Right, so we're missing diff branches. I'm going to take that out of the repo as well, because I think I think those are workspace operations for me personally. Oh, fat fingered that. Right, and now we're saying undefined hubflow.create branch. Cool, we've made progress. Awesome. So at the minute, our local here, which has to be stateful, because actually it needs a workspace, but we'll sort that out in a minute. Oh, and Rob's leaving us for the night. As always, Rob, thank you for being here, and I'll talk to you on Slack in the morning. The evening always goes great when there's someone like Rob around or Matt around, and I'm chatting with them, and it's a bit more two-way. Certainly makes the time fly for me. Right then, where was I? I was saying local needs to be stateful because we've got to put a workspace into here. So let me just check that back over here and go to single screen. So let's look at workspace. I'm just thinking about how we want local and remote. I think we want WS star workspace. ws.local equals ws equals local ws. I'm going to want to do that for remote as well. You are complaining for many reasons. Non-name, because you already exist. You want a comma, and you're going to complain for different reasons. Now in remote you don't exist, so we've got to fix you. Remote.go, that one there. Again, you want to be WS star workspace. There we go. Close you back down. So now, the reason I've done that, so we're in a workspace, and when the time comes to make branch exists actually work, we now have access to we can now go l.ws and gives us access to the workspace. But we're not going to use that yet. In fact, we're probably not going to use it tonight. We're already coming up on 2 hours. We're still sketching out the code, and we haven't got anywhere near actually calling Git. But we have got the code compiling, which I'm feeling very good at. Undefined hubflow.createBranch. I need to write that. Right then, so hubflow.createBranch. Go over here, down to Hubflow, and this is an action. We're just going to grab one that exists. New file, action create branch.go. Doesn't do anything yet. And at this point, there's a question about how much value the Hubflow layer is adding. Because all Hubflow.createBranch is going to do, and this needs to be a repo, and then wants to be branch name string, is going to call, and this is R for repo, it's going to call R dot create branch, and it's going to take the name as the parameter, and we're just going to open repo.go, create branch, name is string. It should actually return some other stuff. We'll go to local.go, and there's going to be, is there a create branch in here already? There should be somewhere. Create branch, name string, to be done. But I mean, this is literally See, let me sketch this code out. What this is going to end up doing is just going to end up, this is going to return WS, and in here there's going to be the Git abstraction layer, and that's going to have a create branch. It's going to be something like that, is what it's going to do. And the question is are we really adding value here, or are we adding complexity? And I'm not sure. Now, we're not animating these tonight, so I'm not going to worry about that too much, but it's starting to prey on my mind a bit. How are we doing for compiling? Okay, so that is action create, Wix. That's all right. One moment. So let's click through it. Takes an interface. So let's try compiling again. Let's just close that down for the moment. So there we go. We're creating variables that we're not doing anything with, which we know we were doing. Because for some reason, now it is doing the squiggly. That's all right. We are making headway. The code's, I'm happy with how the code's compiling, and I'm happy with the compiler errors we're getting. So we're creating those, we're creating the feature branch. What else do we need to do? We've got to save the config. So this is Hubflow.set production is production branch. Set integration branch. And we want to do hubflow.config.set feature branch prefix feature branch prefix. That's what we want to do. So these don't exist on the config yet. They're called receivers. That's the term. They are receivers. And this is complaining that it doesn't have them, because we no longer have the Hubflow structure, so we no longer have the config structure to hang them off. Aha. So what we need to do is do something like this instead. Make config a function. Hubflow config. Function func config config equals config, which is empty, return conf, return the address of it. This is rubbish. Really, it's not. It really is not very good at all. I am not doing an initialize. See, what a lot of people would do is they'd make this config structure, they'd make it a file level variable, but that would prevent the Hubflow package working with multiple workspaces. So that's because of the colon there. Nope, you're still not happy. So I can't call it that. I have to do something else. What do I want to do here? I'm just thinking about how to structure this code. If I jump back over here, I'm using this as namespacing to make the function names easier to read. That's what I'm doing. Should also take a WS anyway. I want that. And while it looks nice, it's tricky to... There's got to be a better way to do that. Should we have a separate config package? Should we have a separate config package? That would be the Golang way. So what we would do, so we've got all our packages here. We'd have another folder here called Hubflow config. And then, where's our config.go? We'll grab that and we'll bring it down into here. We're going to break it up. But this would be package Hubflow config. There's no config type. You don't need a config this fake function anymore. We don't need the receivers. They can go. All the red squiggly's gone. There's some yellow squiggly. Don't use. Doesn't like that. They don't like us using camel case, so we won't. And then what we do over here in our command is we now need to import Hubflow config as well. So that this now becomes Hubflow config, and we do it like that. Let me think about that. So what we've done here is we've split the Hubflow package up in two. so that we can manage the config. It's clear that we're working on the config rather than the workspace. That's what we've done. Now, is that going to cause confusion having two separate packages like that? I don't know, but right now this feels like the way to go. Some red squiggly. What are you complaining about? Oh yes, let me just sort that out. Why has that disappeared? We use it, so why has that gone? Oh, because I forgot to do that down here. Now, I think that like a camel case support for package names is a little unfriendly. If you were to feed this into like a screen reader or something, I think it may cause a slight accessibility issue. Right then, let's just fix our compiler errors. And let me just get rid of that so we can see what we're doing. So there's no configs in the structure anymore. In fact, the structure doesn't need to exist. We don't need a hubflow.go, that can go entirely. Yes, I'm committed to that. Right, there's no more Hubflow structure at all. I'm committed to this stateless approach. So now you're complaining that origin is declared but not used. That's our last compile error of the evening. But that's all right. I am going to mark that as the unmarked variable. So we do compile. So while there's some work to do to refactor this to make it lots of smaller, snappier functions, as a high-level piece of code, this is looking all right. Our Hubflow package is going to have our queries and our actions in. And it's going to work. And these are going to be wrappers around our workspace. We've started introducing taking the repo into some of the Hubflow actions. And we've split things up so there's and we've also made that local and remote will compile and implement the repo interface. It's a fledgling interface, it's got a lot of work to go. And we've now got a Hubflow config package just to make the code more readable when working with the configuration. So we haven't animated anything tonight, but we never said the code was going to run. It should now compile. It compiles. We've built out more of the init command. What's left to do? So it's creation of head, creation of master, creation of develop. So all this is to be animated. We have to switch to the develop branch. Then we start asking for names later on. This is a mess. Hotfix branches. We've forgotten about hotfix branches. We've got to add those in. We've got the version tag prefix. So let's go back to sketching these. Right. Prefix do we want to use for hotfix branches? Hotfix branch prefix. I'm going to pass that in, and then we're going to Hubflow config.set hotfix branch prefix. And we are going to have, what prefix do we want for version to access? So version tag prefix, and then Hubflow config.set version branch prefix ws version branch prefix. Now this code is simplistic because you can run Hubflow. You can run githf in a folder that has already been initialized for Hubflow. And yet here, what we are doing is we are determining these branch names, and then if they don't exist, we do them. And then we're writing the configuration whether or not it already exists. This is a little wasteful. We'll probably roll with it for now, but that could be a little, that could be a little more graceful. And the same here. These configs may already exist. These configs may already exist. So there's some work to do. There's some work to do here to make this a little bit more graceful, I think. But yeah, it's coming along. It's coming along. Now back to our code for a moment. And the last thing we do is we do a push latest changes to origin. So let's go back to here. Okay, auto sync. And do you take any parameters? You don't take a workspace at the minute. You should probably also take the name of origin, but we'll refactor that again later. Now there's some big pieces of functionality that are missing compared to the shell script. There's no two ways about that. But and this is a single method. Function is too long for my liking, but it's very readable. It's nice. There's no snakes and ladders going on. It's all nice and thin. I mean, there's an if inside a for loop. Don't mind about that. There's a lot of refactoring to do to dry this code out a bit, but the basics are coming along. The basics are coming along. So I'm feeling all right about this. I'm feeling all right about the progress we've made tonight. Now, is there anything else I want to do before I call it? I don't think there is. I think all we've got to do now is start animating this stuff, to be honest. There's complexity in here. I'm ignoring support branches, by the way. Release branches, release branch prefix. What prefix do we want to use for release branches? Release branch prefix. There we go. So we should probably build these placeholders out now for tonight. Because we've got these different prefixes. They are explicit. I'm just trying to think about how we could drive this code out into a nice loop or something rather than... Well, this is readable. Obviously, it's a lot of code to animate. And if we could put all this into some sort of structure, that would be a lot better. I'm going to think about that before next week. But yeah, ignoring all the actual implementation details required to animate the code, which is glossing over a lot, hell of a lot, I think we're there for tonight. So if I go back to slide cam, let's have a look. Let's go back to our objectives. So building the init command, how did we do with that? We've made progress. We have definitely made progress on this. There is more to be done. There is definitely more to be done, but we've made progress. We need to animate it, and as I said, we've glossed over a hell of a lot of complexity, and I may regret doing that next week. And can we get everything compiling tonight? Well, if we go back to LinuxCam for a moment, the answer is no. But that's because I'm pretty certain I want to dry this code out. So I don't want to chuck in these stubs. This is the only bit that doesn't compile. I don't want to chuck in these stubs tonight because I think I'm going to dry this code out instead. Am I going to do that? I'm going to think about drying the code out. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy with the progress we've made. Now, as always, if you're watching this on catch up, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think, or you can ping me on Twitter, or if you know where I hang out on Slack, you can go and ping me on Slack. He says enigmatically. Yeah, get my teeth in. So yes, by all means, please do give me some feedback. What do you think to the design decisions I've made tonight? What do you think to the choices I've made? Have I made good choices? Are there better choices available? Have I made some bad choices specifically by trying to avoid state? I'm trying to make the code as stateless as possible. I want to pass either the repo or the workspace as a whole around. That's what I want to do. I want our Hubflow commands to only interact with the Hubflow packages. I don't want them calling directly into the workspaces and into the repos. I don't want them doing that. We do it up here and then we switch. I mean, everything else is Hubflow logic. Have I got that right? Have I got or is there a problem with the balance maybe on that one? Questions to be answered. How am I going to dry this code out? Should I dry this code out? I'm feeling good about the branches being handled explicitly at the minute. That feels right. It feels right that they should be treated as special cases. I may change my mind on that as well as I go through. But certainly these prefixes which are in config. Should we dry this code out? Or for now, should we just put explicit stubs in and animate those and then look at drying the code out at a much later date when we've got a lot more code to examine? These are questions for anyone who's watching on catch up. Do leave a comment. That would be awesome. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Don't forget to tell me where in the world you're watching this from. And a little bit of news about where you are. That'd be awesome. Help me learn. Help me broaden my horizons. That'd be fantastic. But above all else, thank you for watching. Stay safe. And I'll see you in the next episode.